Australian mothers. Tonight they're on their home ground, and thank you for the way in which you've acknowledged their bravery. We're so excited to have you here tonight, Chella, Marika and Heidi. You've led the way, and it's great to be a part of the journey you're on. We're with you all the way. Thank you. Well, we know, we certainly know it's okay to say no. It's fantastic that you've broken any sense of intimidation by coming out tonight, by being on the streets, by talking to people, by finding out that many in the Victorian community are 100% on board preserving traditional marriage, valuing it for what it is. Can I welcome our very special honoured guest tonight, the Honourable Kevin Andrews MP, Dr Rachel Carling-Jenkins, MLC, Lyle Shelton, the Coalition for Marriage spokesperson and ACL Managing Director, Karina Ocatel, the Federal Secretary, the Vice President, Karina, of the Liberal Party, Keith Mills, a remarkable Irish advocate for the No case. It's fantastic to have our honoured guests here tonight. Could you put your hand together for them? Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the stage a gentleman who was reported in the media last week as having more media coverage than all the gay advocates combined. He's a tireless fighter for traditional marriage, the wonderful Lyle Shelton.
To Melbourne for that warm welcome. It is okay to say no. I'm glad you think so. Well, this Coalition for Marriage has been a wonderful team effort, and one of the other people I'd like to acknowledge tonight too is Damien Wild, the CEO of Marriage Alliance, one of the key partner groups. We've been sustaining a campaign now for about 7 weeks. It's been full on, and I think our side is doing very, very well. We are chasing them down. This is a referendum on freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and what your children will be taught at school in terms of radical LGBTIQ sex education. And that's why these mums are so important. We're going to hear more from them. We've been accused of conflating the issue of bringing in issues that seemingly have nothing to do with redefining marriage. But I was contemplating this today and thinking, what other change in the law have people then tried to constrict what you can and can't say about the consequences? If we change laws, we have environmental impact statements. The whole job of a parliament is to look at consequences, intended or unintended, of any change that's due to be made. But in this debate, we've been told we can look no further than a wedding ceremony, and there's nothing else to see here. Well, that's not how we go about our normal processes. There are consequences to changing this definition. One of the things that has grieved me most about this campaign is the idea that if you don't support redefining marriage, somehow you are a bigot, you're a hater, you're a homophobe. And we've all been called these things. And that grieves me enormously because I bear no animus towards my fellow Australians. No ill will whatsoever. This is a debate about public policy, not about whether I love or hate someone. We love all people, but this has consequences, and we should be able to love people and disagree amicably, and I think we can do that as Australians. Now, we keep hearing this no consequences mantra from the other side. We've been told by people like the Liberal Senator Dean Smith from Western Australia, who's put forward a bill which he's crafted with the help of Tim Wilson from here in Melbourne, another Liberal. They tell us that freedoms are covered. Even our Prime Minister, who I have great respect for, says freedoms will be covered in any change that's proposed. And this week we've seen the Yes campaign pointing to the Dean Smith bill as the model. Well, if anyone's had a look at the Dean Smith bill as I have, you'll know that the only protection, the only Australians that are protected in there are paid religious clergy, pastors, priests, imams, rabbis. There is no protection for you or I. There's no protection for people like Archbishop Julian Porteous down in Tasmania, who in 2015 distributed a gentle pastoral letter to his people in Tasmania, outlining the Christian view of marriage, saying that wherever possible, children deserve a mum and a dad. There's no protection in the Dean Smith bill beyond professional religious clergy. There's a whole bunch of other Australians who will want to always believe the truth about marriage, that it's between a man and a woman. Forget about the weddings. This goes way beyond there. Today we've seen the people who encouraged Archbishop Julian Porteous to be taken to the Tasmanian Anti-Discrimination Tribunal for distributing that gentle pastoral letter. The same people come out today and say that the Yes campaign needs to change tactics. They said the No campaign, that's us, is gaining ground and it's time to change course. This was authored by Rodney Croome, arguably Australia's most prominent same-sex marriage activist, the man who said that Julian Porteous's views on marriage, our views on marriage, are hate and prejudice, and that we should be fined for it. These people came out today and said the Yes campaign needs to change its tactics. I find that extraordinary because they are proving our concern about freedom of speech and freedom of religion, the people who want us fined. Tony Abbott's sister, Christine Foster, last week in an interview on Sky News, she said that priest in Tasmania, what he said was offensive. That's what they think about our view of marriage. They want us to be fined. The real intolerance, folks, is not on this side of the debate. Chris Kenny in The Australian said it very well this morning. He said, "This description of marriage as a right has enabled advocates to portray opponents as bigots." A Christian girl in Canberra this week is sacked and smeared as homophobic. Security do their job. Thank you. I guess this sort of behaviour that we've seen tonight, and which we in our organisation, ACL, and our other Coalition for Marriage Partners have seen over the years, is licensed when those in political power can say that we are bigots, that we are haters, and we are homophobes. And of course that's not the case. And I guess that's the point that Chris Kenny was making. A Christian girl is sacked and smeared as homophobic simply because she writes on her Facebook page that it's okay to say no. Australian Christian lobby officers are firebombed. Tim Minchin on the ABC sings about no voters as bigoted, and I won't say the next word that he's saying live on the ABC. Sydney University No campaigners are set upon. And comedian and gay activist Benjamin Law, a columnist with the Fairfax newspapers such as The Age, threatens to hate MPs who oppose gay marriage. Some people say that this sort of behaviour is on both sides, but no one on our side with the sort of stature of a Benjamin Law has said anything remotely close to this. The intolerance, folks, as we've seen over the last 6 or 7 weeks, has been one way. And it's not only from people like Benjamin Law, but Tanya Plibersek, the deputy leader of the Labor Party, wrote in an email just over a week ago urging people to go to a Yes rally. She said, "Let's drown out hate with love." Now, this is what... it would be funny if it was not so serious. This is a woman who aspires to be the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia. If she thinks that what all of us in this room believe is hate about our fellow Australians, what is someone like that going to do to people like us if they have real political power, which she may well do if Labor win an election in the future? I think we've got to think about the rhetoric on the other side. Ideas have consequence. The Prime Minister says that he believes in freedom of speech more than he believes, believes in freedom of religion more than he believes in same-sex marriage. I believe that he's genuine in that, but I think we've seen a very superficial debate where no one has really looked at the actual consequences. After 10 years of same-sex marriage in Sweden, the Prime Minister, Stefan Löfven, said in June, if priests and pastors don't wish to solemnise same-sex marriages, they should get another job. Now, that's not law in Sweden yet, but that tells you where the political trajectory is going. The Speaker of the UK House of Commons, just 3 or 4 years after same-sex marriage there, said we'll never have proper equal marriage until the church is compelled to do same-sex marriages. Dean Smith and Tim Wilson and the Prime Minister, with the best intent in the world, can say they will protect priests and pastors, but that is not the trajectory of where the same-sex marriage movement is going. There is no protection for freedom of speech, no protection for Christian and Muslim schools that wish to teach their children the true version of marriage. My simple message tonight is, if the same-sex marriage movement doesn't believe in freedom of speech, if politicians can't or won't protect your freedom of speech, vote no.
One of the great things about Lyle is he has a very gentle and polite way of dealing with his opponents. So, well done, Lyle. The next speaker on the stage has spent a lot of her professional life being a legal aid lawyer, defending people who are in difficult situations, difficult circumstances, people for whom they're at the bottom of the rung in many, many respects. And Karina Rocketel has built a career defending people on legal aid and done an excellent job. Karina recently was at the National Press Club alongside Lyle Shelton. She is also the Vice President of the Federal Liberal Party, so has great authority in that most important party. Welcome to the stage, Karina Rocketel.
Trolls, but I guess that's nothing compared to the attempted attack we just saw now against Lyle. But what is interesting is that a lot of the troll comments that I've received tell me to go back home. They wish my boat never arrived in Australia, and they want migrants to stop coming to Australia because they bring backward thinking with them. First of all, I was born in Australia. I've never travelled any great distance by boat. And since when did the left become racist? This morning we were out campaigning in the western suburbs with an awesome group of all different skin shades, and someone drove past yelling, yes to marriage equality and no to immigration. The reality is that the Yes campaign is not about equality. As the great John Howard said, changing the definition of marriage, which has lasted for time immemorial, is not an exercise in human rights and equality. It's an exercise in deauthorising the Judeo-Christian influence in our society, and anybody who pretends otherwise is deluding themselves. The majority of countries, and all non-Western countries, have not legalised same-sex marriage. In claiming that other Western countries have legalised same-sex marriage, and therefore Australia should too, is to suggest that countries that have not are somehow backwards. But to legalise same-sex marriage is actually to turn our back on the wisdom of culture and traditions that tell us that children are generally best served when raised by their biological parents. The Yes campaign have also tried to reinvent marriage as being about love. But the primary function of marriage has never been about love. That's why so many of my relatives' arranged marriages have worked out so well. Marriage is about the protection and procreation of children. And children should have a right to know and be raised by their biological mother and father wherever possible. By legalising same-sex marriage, the Yes campaign are asking the state to sanction the creation of children who will never know or have relationships with their biological parents as their family. The commercialisation of surrogacy is another significant consequence. Childbirth for any woman can have serious physical and mental health consequences for mothers. But many same-sex marriage advocates are already pushing for the legalisation of commercial surrogacy. Poor and vulnerable women in Asian countries are open to exploitation through commercial surrogacy, which would only increase if same-sex marriage is legalised. At present, commercial surrogacy remains illegal in Australia, as it raises serious ethical issues. However, the legalisation of same-sex marriage, commercialising surrogacy at home too, is the logical next step. Ali Kadri from the Islamic Council said that the main reason you are not hearing this voice in support of no vote is that Muslims are afraid that they will straight away be called an extremist as soon as they come out with an opinion. So Muslims are afraid to express their opinion. We are afraid that if we come out with our opinion, then the left may abandon us for going against their view. It's time for people of good conscience to reassert themselves in the public, political, social and cultural debate, because too often the major decisions in this country are promoted by sectional interest groups that are often unrepresentative of the majority of Australians. More Australians from the myriad religious and ethnic communities within Australia need to articulate the case for the family, for children and for institutions which have stood the test of time. Many migrants, like my parents, chose to come to Australia because of the freedoms all Australians enjoy. Freedom of speech, freedom to practice your religion in peace and without persecution, and freedom to raise your children as children without premature sexualisation and gender theory being forced on them. These freedoms are at stake for all of us. If ever there was a time to stand up, it's now. For freedom and for future generations of Australians, it's more than okay to say no. We must say no.
Thank you, Karina. Fantastic insights and just so well put. We're very grateful for your contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, you may have seen an advertisement on television or Facebook. This is the ad that basically remained on the banner of the Sydney Morning Herald for days and days and days. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a look at this first ad.
School programs have no place teaching my son radical gender ideas that he might not be who he was born as.
How am I supposed to protect my kids in the future from this stuff? You can say no.
authorised by That may not have been the first ad, but it does feature Chella White, and Chella is speaking for all state school, high school parents, particularly secular parents that don't come from a faith perspective. She's a believer in biology, and she's a great defender of her children. Welcome to the stage, Chella White.
I made the decision to take my kids out of their local school because of the Safe Schools program. About 8 weeks after the program was introduced to our school, my son came home and told me he could wear a dress to school next year if he felt like it. That's not okay. There was a note read out in science class to congratulate the students on their uniform compliance in 2015. However, it went on to say that in 2016, they could wear the uniform of their choice. I know that the principal has since said it didn't happen. It did. I believe my son. The Safe Schools program suggests that education policies should include students being able to choose the bathroom, change room, and camp facilities of their choice. I was concerned not only for my son, but also for my daughters. I didn't want my Year 7 daughter in the bathroom with a Year 12 boy. It's not right, it's not okay. I did my research and looked through some of the frightening content on the Minus 18 website. This is the organisation the Safe Schools program promotes.
I might just ask the audience to be quiet, please, just as the security do their job. Thank you.
Free speech is not an argument. Free speech is not an argument. Would you give free speech rights to Nazi Germany fascists? Would you?
Yes! Oh.
This is the organisation the Safe Schools program promotes. The school told me I wasn't allowed to ask questions about -18. I'm a mother. I am allowed to ask these questions because transparency is important. I went to the education department not once but twice. I was told that the Safe Schools program was not an anti-bullying program. It is a sexual and gender diversity program. At the second meeting, I met with the creator of the Safe Schools program, Ros Ward. I told her about the dress incident. I asked her what was the benefit to my son. She said now he knows that the uniform policy has changed. I'm happy for my kids to be part of a true anti-bullying program without the sexualisation of children and without LGBT activism. I asked the school for an opt-out, but they told me that there was none available because the program was woven throughout the entire curriculum. The program, which sexualises and confuses our children from a young age, has been introduced without parental knowledge and consent. That's not okay. The principal said he didn't hear about my complaint. He told the media I was making it up. I had media outlets calling me a liar. The education department backed my story. Hardly anyone reported that, and that's not okay. I just want to touch briefly on the No campaign's first ad. It featured Pansy Lai, Heidi McIver and myself. Since the ad aired, all three of us have experienced unbelievable bullying, threats and intimidation from members of the community who should know better. My elderly mother has also been made a target, and I too reported to the police. It surprises me that some of the people who have sent these messages appear to be in the corporate arena. Some are counsellors, some work in disability services, and probably the most alarming of all, some work in suicide crisis centres. Speaking freely these days now comes at a cost. Those who dare to speak out in support of marriage face threats. It's clear to see that freedom of speech is under attack, and if we redefine marriage, it's only going to intensify. The undermining of parents will continue at a greater pace with the full force of the new law as its backing. I've come forward to raise awareness, and that's always been my goal. Many parents didn't know about the Safe Schools program. They deserve to know what's happening in our Australian schools. But the reason I'm standing here tonight, despite all these things that have happened that are not okay, is because there is something that is okay. There is something that is definitely okay, and that is, it's okay to say no.
What you just saw there, I think, was probably one of the most bravest moments of this campaign.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that you mums have been put in this position, but we so appreciate you stepping up like this. I just want to say that we want to... It's really important that we continue on with the night. We've got some fantastic speakers, and I think we should just dial it down a little bit. And let's just have calm. If there's any more incidents, let's not have any more shouting. Let the security do their job. We want to have a respectful meeting tonight, and we want to hear the rest of the speakers. So please encourage that. That would be terrific. Thanks, Dan.
The lady who's next going to address us is the wonderful Heidi McIver. Heidi has shot to fame for doing one simple thing, standing up for her children. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you. I never expected that quoting material directly from Safe Schools, a program that is pushed by the LGBTI activists, would create such a controversy in our nation. 3 mums were essentially doing their job, and our job is to protect our children.
Yep.
Our kids' rights deserve to be heard in this national plebiscite. They can't vote, they can't debate, and they don't yet understand what's happening in the world. So as parents, we must be the voice of our children, and our voice must be loud, clear, and powerful, because they deserve powerful representation. Us parents have an amazing privilege to raise a child. We are the gatekeepers of what comes into their lives. But what I've seen happen overseas, wherever same-sex marriage is legalised, is that other people start opening the gates to what comes into our children's lives, and we are powerless to close it. The government opens gates, LGBTI lobby groups open gates, and parents are told that they have no right to opt their children out or to even know what they're being taught. Every day, the overseas evidence is mounting of violations of freedom of speech, freedom of religion and conscience, and parental rights being overridden. Yet Malcolm Turnbull and other leaders of the Yes campaign stubbornly stick to their line that nothing will change. This is a disingenuous promise that has been broken everywhere same-sex marriage has been introduced. I want to send a clear message to the leaders of the Yes campaign. You are asking us to blindly trust you with the most precious thing in our lives, our children. And what reason are you giving us to trust you? I just want to say I have no reason to trust the political leaders of the Yes campaign, because I've seen the trends overseas. Is this like when the British government made heartfelt promises to protect religious freedom, and 4 years after same-sex marriage was introduced, a Jewish girls' school in London is facing closure because it won't teach its primary students about gender fluidity? Is it like when the people of Massachusetts were told that same-sex marriage wouldn't change anything, and almost instantly the curriculum from high school to preschool was hijacked by gender ideology and homosexual sex ed? Is it like when the people of Ireland were given religious and educational protections under Section 37 of the state's Employment Equality Act, and they were repealed the very same year within months of the law being changed? Or is it like Canada, where Father Steve Toulouse took his case all the way to the Supreme Court, only to be told he doesn't have the right to know what his primary school-age children are being taught about sex in school? These are landmark court cases and human rights violations occurring in Western democratic countries that are setting a legal precedent to override speech, religion, conscience and parental choice. So we, the parents of Australia, send a message to our political leaders. We don't trust you. We don't trust you with our children. We don't trust you to protect our freedom of speech. We don't trust you to protect our freedom of religion. Our kids are not your social experiments. They are our future. They are not sexual beings. Sexual beings from birth, they are innocent. They are not bigots or homophobes if they don't participate in your radical sex ed programs. They're just kids. My primary school age kids don't know anything about sex, gender fluidity or LGBTI issues. What they do know is Lego, basketball, Monopoly, friends, music, and their faith. All things that they love and all things childhood is about. And my husband and I feel like we are working overtime to protect that childhood. That's not right. When it's time to introduce these concepts, we, their parents, we want to be the ones to do it. We know how to do it best. We know when they're emotionally ready to hear it, and we know how to deliver it. We don't want a one-size-fits-all government program written by Marxist academics with political agendas and disturbing sexual ideologies. History tells us time and time again that the state is never a good substitute for parents. The claim that nothing will change if same-sex marriage is passed has been, its credibility has been attacked, because already we are feeling the persecution of it, even here tonight. I've received a death threat, a threat to burn my church, and the most horrendous and relentless abuse levelled at myself and my family. One of my friends was shocked to hear me say that I didn't regret participating in that ad. She said, "Isn't the cost too great?" My answer is, the cost of my children learning every alternative sexual practice in school is too great. The cost of not... not being able to voice my belief in traditional marriage without fear of being persecuted and bullied is too great. The cost of being prosecuted for expressing the teaching of my faith on marriage is too great. So my answer is, the cost of our silence is too great. I just want to finish with a message that I want to send to my children. When they asked why Mummy was going to Brisbane last night, my husband said, "Mummy's going to fight Goliath." And that's what it feels like sometimes. But my sons, they don't know anything about what's happening at the moment. We've been able to protect them from that. But my message to them is one day they will know what happened. And I want to tell them that your childhood and your innocence is sacred. I never had an uncomplicated childhood, and I vowed that I would do everything in my power to give it to my children. So I don't care if I'm mocked, abused, if my reputation is trashed, if I'm bullied, if I'm threatened, my children are worth every bit of it.
So much, Heidi. As well as participating, as Heidi and Shella participated in the advertisement that was the first advertisement, there was a New South Wales doctor, Dr. Pansy Lai. Dr. Pansy has had her, her right to practice medicine threatened, and she's a very brave doctor, and we acknowledge and support her tonight as well. Could I just take a moment now just to introduce Dr. Rachel Carling-Jenkins, an Upper House member of the Victorian Parliament. Rachel is a newly minted Upper House member of the Australian Conservatives here in Victoria. She works closely with Senator Cory Bernardi. Welcome to the stage, Rachel.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here tonight. I want to acknowledge everyone who's come out, given up their Saturday night to be here to defend marriage. And I certainly welcome the opportunity to lend my voice in the fight to defend marriage. Most of you here in Victoria will know my personal story, and I'm not going to repeat it tonight. But I lost my marriage about 18 months ago. And so people ask me, how can you now defend marriage? How can you defend it? And to me, it's simple. I still believe in traditional marriage. And I am here tonight to defend marriage and to be a voice for the vulnerable in this debate and to be a voice for the voiceless in this debate. This is a debate that has become unnecessarily volatile, and we've seen that even here tonight. We've seen it in campaigns on the streets. We've seen it in signs in shop fronts. And we even have seen this in the messages coming into the privacy of our own homes in text messages received today. Today, my father, Stan Carling, who is the most conservative Christian man I know, received one of those text messages. It said, "The marriage equality survey forms have arrived. Help make history and vote yes for a fairer Australia." How invasive, how deceptive, and how very, very wrong. As Senator Bernardi has said, we are under assault because we are on the right side of legal and moral history. Changing the definition of marriage will have consequences. It will have consequences for our entire nation, for our local churches, for our local businesses, for our families, for our children, and for ourselves. Behind the front of this same-sex marriage campaign, along with its rhetoric, and it is just rhetoric of love and equality, is a much more sinister force. There is a broader agenda at work. Cultural Marxists see our traditional culture, our traditional marriage, as a source of oppression. And in this debate, they are using the LGBTICQ community, portraying this small section of our community as being on the receiving end of this oppression. So they have been working for a long time, relentlessly, in a sustained and systematic way to attack our very foundations. This undermines our nation. Our freedoms are under attack. Our Australian way of life is under attack, and our families are under attack. Make no mistake, wherever same-sex marriage has been introduced across the world, the nations have suffered. Their institutions, their foundations, their families, and their citizens have been undermined. We've already heard tonight about Tasmania's Archbishop Julian Portis, who suffered an attack already here in Australia. This kind of subjective offence leading to legal consequences will become the norm for citizens rather than the exception if same-sex marriage is legalised. Local churches, their leaders and their congregations will be left vulnerable. Their teachings, which are the very basis of their existence, will be undermined. Not maybe undermined, will be undermined. Subjective offence to teachings of the church will be legal. Discrimination towards churches won't just be encouraged, it will be protected under law. Local businesses, their owners and their employees will be left vulnerable. They will have no right to act according to their beliefs. We've all heard in jurisdictions overseas about the bakers and the reception centres being prosecuted for refusing to accommodate same-sex couples, and this will happen here too. And our families will be vulnerable. The very basic building block of our society is being threatened and undermined. Our children and our grandchildren will be vulnerable, and they are the voiceless in this debate, our future generations. And we are here tonight to stand in the gap for them.
Yeah.
I was speaking to a young man recently who said to me, if society continues to go down this path, I'm going to have to seriously consider whether I should have children or not. What a devastating but understandable thought process for a young person in our community to have. We must stand in the gap for young men and young women like that, to protect their future, to protect the future generations who are under threat. And we, as individuals here tonight, are also vulnerable. The consequences of changing the definition of marriage will be felt by all. It will impact our individual fundamental freedoms, because we'll no longer be free to hold rallies like this, to express our views and our counter-arguments, to express our thoughts and advocate for our position. So we are here tonight to unite around the movement to vote no.
Yeah.
In closing, I want to say this. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Our lives begin to end the day we are silent about the things that matter." This debate matters. Do not be silent. Speak to your family, speak to your friends, speak to your neighbours. Now is not the time to be a passive bystander. Tonight I urge you to join me, to not stand by, to not be silent about the things that matter, to stand in the gap for the vulnerable and the voiceless in this debate, to join me in the campaign to vote no, because it's not just okay to vote no, we must vote no. God bless you all.
I think strengthened by the stand taken by other mothers, somebody who was obviously very protective about their own privacy and their own, I suppose, concern about coming out in public on this issue, is a young mother who basically went on Facebook and told her story. She became an internet juggernaut, lifting the lid on the Safe Schools fiasco. Welcome to the stage, Marika Rancy. Thank you very much.
You do not come between a mother and her child and get away with it. We keep hearing, love is love. Love does not get to be your slogan when your mantra is hate, silencing, intolerance, and reverse bigotry. I am evidence of one of the early victims of what will come if the Marriage Act is changed. I am a mother who simply spoke up about the disgusting sexualising of my children through a deceptively packaged program known as Safe Schools. Look at the attack on my beautiful friend, the soft-souled Chella White, the original mama warrior. Shame. And I honour her tonight. I had no intention actually of stepping into the marriage debate. When I went out onto my back deck, I put my toddler down for a nap, I chucked a little bit of red lippy on, didn't even put it on properly, had I known. Anyway, and I got my phone and I thought, I'm going to tell my story. And it came from such desperation of the fact that for 2 years I'd been speaking out about these programs and it just felt like this massive boulder that just would not move, and it was just heartbreaking. And so in a desperate attempt, I went and posted this video. I had a blog page, Political Posting Mama. I had about 300 followers on there, and I thought, well, that's another 300 people who are going to hear my story. Little did I know that by that night it would reach 1.1 million. And has now had 4.6 million views as of this afternoon. And that's not about me. That's because of a mother's love. We hear love is love. Let me tell you what I know about love. There is no greater human love than a love that a mother has for her child. No greater love. When that video went viral was when the trolling and the hatred and the abuse and the victimisation and the silencing came thick and fast. A mother will die for her children. And I was confronted with that very notion as I stood in my kitchen about a week after this video, and I'd woken up to 79 inbox threats for my life. Wow. If you really care about your children, you will shut your mouth. Threats to sodomise me into silence and to sodomise my children. And I stood in my kitchen and I said to my husband, I think someone's going to kill me. I genuinely thought someone was going to turn up and kill me. And I said, what are we going to do? And he said, honey, he reassured me, it's okay, Ben Shapiro's alive, you'll be okay. And then he said, but you know what? What's the alternative? What's the alternative? So us mamas and us papas and us grandparent warriors, we got to rise up. We got to speak out. Yes. We can't be silenced. My children have been taught gender theory. They have been sexualised in a way that is entirely inappropriate. Exposed to, and you've seen the video, to dildos at the year 8, sex toys for children. The research behind this program comes from a man by the name of Alfred Kinsey, a pedophile. Look it up. This is the foundation of this program, where the creators, known Marxists with known links to wanting pedophilia pushed through as a movement, have created Australia's sexuality education curriculum, where parents have been usurped, discarded, thrown away like we are worthless, shut out of even knowing, where our children are being silenced. This is what's going on, and we must not stand for it. I don't want to live in a genderless world, and this is the aim of this program. Both of my two older children have been taught multiple times by multiple teachers that gender is in the mind. It has nothing to do with your biology, psychology, physiology. It is in the mind, it is fluid. There are multiple genders. So through the political marketing that is Safe Schools, I realised, hang on a minute, this isn't an anti-bullying program, this isn't Safe Schools. And it pushed me forward into the marriage debate. And I looked at the Marriage Act, which writes gender identity into the Marriage Act. Any gender identity, which will be limitless, will become a part of the Marriage Act if a yes vote gets through. No. We are men, we are women. I feel for people who have gender dysphoria, but I will not accept a genderless world. We are different. We are equal, but we are different. I'm proud of that. And in the same way, men and women are different. So is marriage and a same-sex union. And that is the truth. And we must stand for truth. We must stand for righteousness. We must stand for family. We must stand for freedom of speech, freedom of religion, which are all under attack, as we've heard tonight. We have to be, we can do it politely, we can do it kindly, but we cannot be voiceless. Please have those discussions. Have those difficult discussions. We are at war in Australia right now. Pick a side and fight. Kids need to be sheltered and protected. And Mama Warriors across Australia, we are going to protect them.
Yes.
Safe schools and marriage equality are an unholy matrimony that are joined at the hip. We must say no to safe schools. We're going to fight that out. But before then, we must say no to same-sex marriage. Thank you.
No doubt that Marika and the other mothers who've spoken tonight have strengthened hundreds and thousands of other mothers in Australia who will hear their voices. And we're very, very grateful for you. I want to cut to a presentation that's been put together tonight. Thank you.
Almost immediately after same-sex marriage was legalized in Canada, they began to change the curriculum in schools. Materials relating to human sexuality and same-sex marriage were to permeate the entire curriculum, all subjects, all grade levels.
I've had more and more people come up to me in the last few weeks and say, I didn't realise that if we change the Marriage Act, we will give governments a permission slip to force radical gender and sex theories through to our children.
Should the laws be changed to allow same-sex couples to marry? That's the one question. Everything else that's being run is a furphy.
We're talking about 12-year-old kids learning about anal sex. And this is common. This is not a rare thing. I'm not an outlier. This is now in the curriculum documents.
When we take out male and female from the wedding registry, it won't be too long before the concept of boys and girls goes from the classroom too.
Your child comes to our state school and we persuade him or her to be in doubt about his or her own sexual orientation or even his or her own sex. Well, we will help this child make their transition. And you will have no right to interfere or even to know that this is happening unless the child chooses to tell you.
Parents should never feel like they don't have a say in the person that they would do anything in the world to protect.
The question is very simple. It's, do you think two members of the same sex should be allowed to marry, should be able to share in the institution of marriage? That's what the question is.
It's about one question.
This really is about the particular question.
This is about one thing and one thing only.
Same-sex marriage will mean the eradication of the terms mother and father. We recently had a bill pass into law in Ontario. It was called the All Families Are Equal Act. Bill 28 became law. And what that did was strike out quite deliberately the terms mother and father from law and create also conditions in the province of Ontario where you can have up to 4 legal parents.
The power of the state is hugely enhanced. Hence the question asked by our own Chief Justice, who owns the children?
But it's okay. It's okay because they tell us to trust them. Trust them. Trust them. Put your faith in a politician. That is what they are asking us to do.
Australians can trust us.
Well, our next guest is someone who has also had lived experience of the things that we've seen here tonight. I first encountered Keith Mills through my television screen in 2015 when the Irish referendum to redefine marriage was underway. And Keith, a gay man from Dublin, Ireland, and Paddy Manning, another gay man from Ireland, were the face of the No campaign there. And they were very effective and very powerful. And I was quite perplexed as to why 2 gay men were so engaged in the campaign to redefine marriage. And I thought I should go and meet this man, knowing that we were going to be having this debate and a plebiscite here. So I got on a plane, went to Dublin, and met with Keith and Paddy and another man called David Quinn, who was the leader of the No campaign there. Our hotel was right next to the Irish Parliament. I thought we'd just meet in the bar, have a couple of Guinnesses, and talk about the campaign. But they actually asked if we could meet in a private room so that no one could see us. This is post-same-sex marriage Ireland, folks. A pall of fear, concern about being seen, discussing these sort of matters. But we've heard from the floor tonight cries of homophobia and bigotry and all of this sort of thing. Well, Keith, as a gay man, as someone who has been very courageous both in Ireland and here, and I don't think Keith is homophobic. Unless he's very scared of himself. It's been an absolute joy and delight to travel the nation with Keith, and I'm so glad that he's come to help burst the bubble that this is about homophobia. Would you please welcome to Melbourne, Keith Mills.
Melbourne, and a big thank you to Lyle and the Coalition for Marriage for inviting me down to make a small contribution to your campaign. First of all, let me explain what happened in Ireland. And there's one significant difference between what happened in Ireland and what is happening in Australia. And you are very, very lucky here in Australia. You have good, articulate, principled politicians who are willing to speak up for marriage. We never had that. couple of them tonight already, and we've got to hear one more. We've heard them in Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane, wherever I've gone in Australia. The people have been listening to voices of representatives doing their job, which they never did in Ireland. What happened in Ireland is a different type of bullying that you're seeing happening here in Australia. In Ireland, they aimed straight for the political parties, brought them all on board, and then the political parties bullied their political representatives and told them, you cannot stand up for traditional marriage. There's a general election 1 year away, and if you speak up for traditional marriage, you risk being deselected or having rival candidates put all the money and efforts put into their campaigns. So we ended up with a House of Representatives, our Doyle, 165 on the yes side, 1 independent speaking up for traditional marriage. And that fed down to society. Our police force, which has always been strictly politically neutral, and I know this from my own family circumstances because my granddad was a policeman and a highly respected one. But when the landlord of his local pub became a local councillor, he was asked not to drink there anymore in case he was seen as being politically compromised. But what happened during our referendum campaign was that our police force was used at rallies, at registration rallies for the Yes campaign, handing out badges, handing out banners, circling all the videos. They did no work whatever, but our posters were brought down in a guerrilla campaign. It was shameful. I mean, it was a political usurpation of our police force. And it didn't stop there. Our charities, which were tax-funded, all rolled in behind the Yes campaign. Our local authorities used their taxpayers' money to promote one side of the debate. And that's not unique to Ireland, that's happening here in Australia. I arrived this day last week in Sydney. I had a little walk around the central business district and I saw these rainbow barriers and I thought, I haven't landed in Sydney, I've landed in gay North Korea. It really was like that. I thought I had a really bad jet lag. So at the end of the day, our campaign was made up of willing people that just had no political experience but felt that they had a civic duty to stand up for marriage, traditional marriage. Our spend was equally disproportionate. We thought initially we were only going to be outspent by 10 or 15 to 1. But when the corporations from America and all their advertising kicked in, we actually ended up being outspent by 20 to 1. The churches, unfortunately, were not there to support us. They've had one scandal after another in Ireland and felt that they didn't want to be involved too prominently in this political campaign. So the end result at the end of the day, 62% voted yes, 38% voted no. Not bad when you consider we only had one MP. But most importantly, and I remember this, that was on a 60% turnout, so 40% didn't vote. So just make those numbers, if you're not good at quick mental arithmetic. If you took a representative sample of 30 Irish potential voters, 12 didn't bother to vote at all, 11 voted yes, 7 voted no. Remember that 12 because it's going to be significant in your vote here. So why did I stand up as a gay man and campaign for traditional marriage? Well, I don't let my sexual orientation dictate my politics. Why should I? You don't, as straight people, allow your sexual orientation to define what you stand for politically. I looked at the 2 different models of marriage. I looked at one that had been handed down from generation to generation. One that supported the family, supported mothers and fathers to raise their children, and was recognised in every country in the world. And that's what I stood for. And on the other side, I saw one which was all about a milestone in an LGBT list of a shopping list, and that was not what I wanted to be involved with. And you are seeing the same choice that you have to make here in Australia. And again, it's probably relevant after what's gone on here this evening, I want to debunk this idea that everybody who's against same-sex marriage is homophobic. I'm obviously a gay man standing up for traditional marriage for reasons that I hope you can understand. And And it's ridiculous, and it's really, really nasty to suggest that the people who are standing up for traditional marriage are driven by homophobia. I guarantee you, if there was a vote next year, and it was to do with polygamy, where a man could marry several wives, most of you would be in the same building here campaigning against that as well. And if it's 10 years' time and people were talking about polyandry and open marriage, you'll be here as well. It's nothing to do with homophobia, it's love for traditional marriage. And this is one thing I'll also say. When people portray those of us who are opposed to same-sex marriage as homophobic, and they tell all vulnerable young gay people to see homophobia where it doesn't exist, and you see people acting like they did this evening, are they doing any favours for young vulnerable gay people to see homophobia where it doesn't exist? They're not. Now obviously, there's been personal attacks on me. I was right in the firing line when I stood up for my beliefs, made videos and went on television, but they're nothing like some of the vitriol that's been aimed at our warrior mums. So, I mean, it's just the theme of bullying is universal when it comes to this. We've already heard about gender recognition and all of that. That's also happened in Ireland. Within 2 months of our referendum passing, a gender recognition bill passed, where a man could transform to a woman or vice versa after just 3 years, but all they had to do was sign a register. They didn't need any psychiatric care or any gender reassignment, and it kicked in at 16 with parental support. But there's now a new bill about to be going through Parliament, which reduces that from 16 to 4. Imagine the conversations and the hysteria that there's going to be for parents when they find out children can go through this at 4 years of age. It's creating an absolute disaster and for the family that we know and we love. One other thing I'm going to tell you about that I don't think a lot of people in Australia know, and that while Ireland is the only country where the people have voted to redefine marriage in a popular vote. And you know why, as I explained earlier. Countries like Slovakia, Croatia, countries like Bermuda and Slovenia have voted and come out in favour of traditional marriage when they had a choice. But you'd never hear about them. And in a couple of weeks' time, Romania will be having a vote, and I believe that they will do similar. We'll hear a lot about respecting diversity and not forcing everybody to do the same thing. Well, for me, I believe in civil partnerships. Civil partnerships recognise the difference between the relationship that a man forms with a man and a man forms with a woman. They are different relationships, and they should be recognised legally differently. One size for all, one type of marriage, and that's what we're told in Ireland now. We only have one type of marriage. You can't refer to same-sex marriage anymore. That's disrespectful. That doesn't work for me. Civil partnerships and traditional marriage, recognising diversity, are the way to go. So you may feel that the Irish story isn't a happy one, but I'll give you some kind of an incentive to think about what happened in Ireland and to put it to your own use. Remember that 12 out of the 30 that didn't vote. You can tap into those people. They could have swung our referendum. The odds were stacked against us in Ireland, but they are not stacked against you. We're already seeing your poll numbers going up. And in every referendum we've had in Ireland, there has always been a swing back to the status quo, and we've had 33 of them since 1959. Because what happens is, before the referendum campaign, the one side that wants change, they get all the publicity, they get a free shot. But during the campaign, and you're seeing it here, and you're knocking on doors, and it's wonderful work, you get a chance to put the case for the status quo, and to sell traditional marriage and how good it is, and take that advantage. So the odds for you are very good. We started at 19% in the opinion polls. We ended up doubling our numbers. On the date, we got to 38%. You don't need to double your numbers to win. and win you can. Australia's future is in your hands. Use that extra $20 or that extra 20 minutes to talk to your neighbours, your friends or your colleagues. This battle is winnable. We lost, you can win.
Thank you so much for coming to Melbourne, Keith, and when we must, we have 150,000 flyers in the foyer, and Keith mentioned the door knocking, and as he was coming out here to the venue with me here this afternoon, he wanted to motivate the volunteers, those who are out having conversations with their neighbours, those delivering flyers. Keith wants to motivate you, and so the flyers are there for you, and we encourage you to take them all tonight. Keith, you mentioned good, articulate principal politicians. We have in the Honourable Kevin Andrews a good, articulate principal politician. Kevin has been a minister under Prime Minister John Howard and under Prime Minister Tony Abbott, and held numerous portfolios, the most recent being the Minister for Defence, and he is now doing so much in the defence of traditional marriage. Welcome to the stage, Kevin Andrews.
Thank you very much, Dan, and friends all here tonight. This is a battle that we must win, and this is a battle which we will win. And can I begin by congratulating the three young, beautiful mums that we've had here tonight. Because the righteous indignation which Heidi and Chella and Marika have expressed here and on other occasions reflects the views of so many Australians about what is being attempted to be foisted upon them. Let's thank them for their courage, but let's make their courage our courage. Let's make their determination our determination, their voice our voice, and their message our message over the coming weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, Australians are slowly coming to recognise the consequences of these changes. Why is it that those who are proponents of the yes case don't want to talk about the consequences? Didn't want to give the Australian people their voice in such a momentous change and say simply, this is about love. It's not simply about love. The consequences are real, as we've heard tonight. Consequences for freedom of speech demonstrated right here tonight. Those who say we shouldn't be able to express the views that we're expressing. And this is while marriage is still defined legally as between a man and a woman. What will happen? What will happen if that definition changes? Will we be able to stand here tonight or on the street or talk to friends or from a pulpit or any other public place and say, I still believe that marriage is between a man and a woman? Or will that be unlawful? And what about religious freedom? Pastors are being dragged before tribunals in this country for simply expressing the age-old Christian belief that marriage is between a man and a woman. What will happen? What will happen if that definition changes. And we're blithely told, don't worry about the consequences. The consequences which have occurred in other countries and other jurisdictions where these changes have been made. And do you think for a moment that those who are behind the so-called Safe Schools program will suddenly back off because same-sex marriage has been legislated? Won't those, the Marxist Ros Ward, in her march with others through the institutions, gain more attention, have more wind in their sails if this change has occurred? And if parents now can't object, can't even know what's happening, in which their children are being taught in their schools, what will the situation be in the future when changes are made? In our happy-go-lucky larrikin way in Australia, we've probably thought that freedom of speech and freedom of religion is protected. But what we've found in the course of this debate is that there's very little protection for freedom of speech and freedom of religion. I chair an inquiry into freedom of religion, and the experts, the constitutional and legal experts that have come before the inquiry have basically said that there's very minimal protection for freedom of religion in Australia. And yet, as others have said tonight, in the bill which is put before us, which may or may not be the bill, should this pass, that limited freedom of protection simply goes to religious ministers and pastors in the performance of the marriage ceremony, not to anything else. Not to a religious organisation providing marriage counselling or marriage education or parenting classes. Not to charities who've already been subject to assault in New Zealand and in the UK, where these changes have been made. Those who blandly and blithely tell us that there are no consequences are either totally mistaken or wishing to mislead us. That's the reality. What is at stake is nothing less than the basis of the civilisation we enjoy. The Marxists are on their march through this civilisation, and regardless of what political hue or persuasion we might have, we can join together, united, to stop that march. The whole idea of toleration, the idea that we allow people to have their religious faith, their belief, their speech, that's been turned on its head. No longer can somebody who professes the age-old, civilisational old view that marriage is between a man and a woman, that's not to be tolerated. Worse than that, persons be dragged before a tribunal, prosecuted and penalised for holding that view. The idea of toleration, a settlement of 300 years ago that let people of different faiths and beliefs and of none live peacefully together, is being upended at the present time. And in the whole 26 years that I've been in the Federal Parliament, there has been no issue more significant than this one tonight. Friends, we must win this battle. Every hour and day and week in the coming month is important. Every opportunity that you get to talk to friends, to colleagues, to family, to others, any spare moment you get to letterbox people in your neighbourhood or your street, anything that you can do in the coming days and weeks to convince others about the consequences, the adverse consequences of these changes is going to be important. The 12 that Keith spoke about are the 12 we must reach. They're not in this room tonight. They're ordinary Australians, men and women, going about their lives, some of whom may think this is not that important. Each of us can reach out to dozens, if not hundreds of other Australians and make a difference in this campaign. Can I finish on this note? If you don't know how this is going to have an impact on freedom of speech, then vote no. If you don't know how this is going to have an impact on freedom of religion, then vote no. If you don't know what the full consequences of these changes will be for what is taught to our children in the schools that they attend, then vote no. In short, if you don't know, vote no.
Kevin, for your thoughtful and very heartfelt contribution here tonight. Kevin, we take on board very deeply your words, which resonate with us. Just welcome back to the stage to bring tonight to a conclusion, Lyle Shelton.
Well, we've just heard the Honourable Kevin Andrews say this is the most important issue that has come on his plate as a parliamentarian of some 26 years. I think this is the defining social debate of our time. There's a lot at stake, as we've heard tonight. And I'm just here to say where we should go from here. It's so important that we don't leave this place without taking action. But can I just first say, it was in this building 2 years ago that I sat somewhere up the back there as an observer at the Australian Labor Party National Conference. And I watched motion after motion being passed, implementing the full suite of the wish list of the LGBTIQ political movement. Everything from forcing Labor Party members to vote for same-sex marriage after 2019, otherwise they get expelled from the party. They voted to fund safe schools through the Commonwealth purse. Don't let anyone ever tell you that same-sex marriage and safe schools are not a package deal. I saw it here at the Labor conference. And then after that was all done and there was no opposition, no one spoke, there were no counter-arguments like we've heard tonight put at the Labor Party conference, the rainbow flag was unfurled on this stage with Bill Shorten, Penny Wong, Tanya Prudisek and Senator Louise Pratt. And the capitulation of the Labor Party to this political movement was complete. I'm worried that the Liberal Party might end up there as well, and we can help them by voting no in this plebiscite to make sure that the other side of politics doesn't also fall to this agenda. And this is significant because our campaigning is already having an effect on the political environment. Just this week, the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, said that if the no side wins, that's us, if we win, this is off the agenda for any future Liberal government for this term and the next term. And that's because all of us have been speaking up. We've had an effect already. So there's a lot at stake here. We can keep one side of politics supporting marriage by winning this. It's really, really important. If we lose this vote, then there will be same-sex marriage legislated before Christmas. And there's been lip service, as we've heard tonight, paid to protections for freedoms, but as we've heard from many speakers, that of course is not the case at all, and it's time we drop the pretence. Sadly, if the Labor Party win the next federal election, regardless of the outcome, so even if we win this no vote, if the no side wins, Bill Shorten has said that Labor will legislate same-sex marriage within 100 days. So they're not even going to listen to the voice of the people. And they're going to fund safe schools. It's a package deal, folks, as we've been hearing tonight from the mums. So what do we do next? Well, it's really important that we continue this fight. The polls, the ability to cast a vote, to post it back, that stays open until November 7. That's a long time still. And whilst many people have already voted and will be voting over this next week or so, there will still be millions of Australians who won't have voted right up until November 7, because this is not a compulsory vote. It's a voluntary vote. And Keith's encouragement to us tonight is really important. We have to fight for every vote right up to November 7. And that means we need your help. This is going to be won in two ways. The first is through a ground war, through each of us having those conversations that Kevin talked about with our neighbours, with our friends. And we've got resources here tonight to help you do that. And I want to really encourage you to join what we call the Freedom Force. If you go to the coalitionformarriage.com.au website and download the Freedom, go to the Freedom window there, you can become a volunteer for freedom. As you go out tonight, as you walk through those back doors and turn right, you can collect materials that will help you become a campaigner. You can pick up a free neighbour visitation vest and a lanyard. We have free badges, free yes badges. No, we don't. We have free no badges. Just checking. You can also purchase a polo shirt. Now, I wore one of these on a Qantas flight yesterday. I felt like a very naughty boy. It's great. Alan Joyce doesn't know. So, we also need you, if you want to help out in the local campaign in Victoria, if you can send an email to vic, V-I-C, at coalitionformarriage.com.au with your name and your details and which federal electorate you are in, that'll help us get you in touch with a local campaign organiser and get you coordinated with the campaign. Door knocking, letterboxing, all of this ground force stuff is really important, the grassroots. That's vic at coalitionformarriage.com.au, your name and your federal electorate. Can you remember that? It's a lot of things to remember. Finally, if you've got some spare cash, and I know many of you in this room have been donating incredibly generously to the campaign through the various coalition partners, through ACL Marriage Alliance, through the Coalition for Marriage itself, the amount of money that's come in from the little people, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, just ordinary mums and dads, that is what has kept the Warrior Mums on the air. I kid you not. We haven't had the big donations from the likes of the Alan Joyce who can just drop $1 million into the campaign. We don't have the Clover Moores in Sydney putting up yes banners all through the CBD of our biggest city at taxpayer expense, and the same in the ACT. This is a David and Goliath battle. If you are able to give some more money to the campaign, or if you haven't given, please could I encourage you to go to coalitionformarriage.com.au and donate today. If you know people who have capacity to give, please get onto them. We still need to continue the air war. There's the ground war and there's the air war in getting the advertising across. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great night tonight. I hope you feel encouraged and emboldened. I hope you feel like you've got the vocabulary, the words that you need to, and the confidence to go and speak with your friends and neighbours. We can win this. We must win this. God bless you. Thank you for coming.